was a pretty gnarly road to get down here. Holy shit, I hope I can make it back up. There's a reason nobody's come down here. Man, I'd love to hunt that ridge up there. Check out this hardwood forest. How cool is this? Pretty cool. Never been here before. By the looks of the tracks in the snow, I'm the first one since it snowed. I'm looking down on Williston Lake. Somewhere down there. Pretty cool. Oh, well, forced to use the Canon this morning. So I forgot the charger for the GoPro, go figure. And my SD card reader will transfer files from that camera to my phone. The Sony Handycam, not so much. Now, hopefully this thing's going to keep rolling, so I'm going to keep my babbling down to next to nothing and get some frickin' emails heard as I keep stacking up. Many good people need to be heard. Okay, let's start with this one. Mark it as red. This is titled Bigfoot. Hi Steve, I drove my 89-year-old mother up to Coquille, Oregon for the summer of 2021 to see her best friend from childhood. Her friend took us over to the house where my mother grew up, and it was still standing. The house is about 110 years old. I took my mother's picture standing by the house and told her that I would make copies and send them to her other children. When we left, my mother jokingly asked her friend, "Isn't that the property where those crazy people saw a Bigfoot?" Her friend replied, "Yes." They both started laughing. I was in the back seat and stated that I had seen one when I was 12, and I saw a footprint at my old gold claim along Yellow Creek in Plumas County up in the Sierra Nevada mountains in Northern California. They both started to laugh. I thought to myself, oh well. I told my dad about it this year, and he said he thinks most people laugh because they are scared. Jasper, my dog, had to go potty about 4 a.m. at our house in Plumas County. We apparently spooked something that was in my driveway, and it ran down the street on 2 feet. A person cannot move that fast. My house is on the south end of town and bordered by forest. It is situated on a dead-end street. All this summer I've smelled that odor that we experienced at my gold claim. I don't give a crap what people think. I've always told people how the cow ate the cabbage, and I know that most don't care for the way I am. I'm a straight shooter. What you see is what you get. Thanks, Gretchen, Stormer. Gretchen, thank you so much for sharing. And you're a member of the club. Was well the club of free, honest people, right? Free, honest, brave people. This place is nothing without people like you. People that laugh. This isn't a funny topic, like I said before. If it was a funny topic, comedians would be using it nonstop because it would make people laugh, but it doesn't. Only fright. Fright makes people laugh. Discomfort makes people laugh. That nervous laugh. Or that loud, phony, overbearing laugh that's meant to shut you up because they don't want to hear it. Anyway, what else do we got? Side note, my friend's teenage boy came hunting with me a couple days, skipped out of school, and I noticed he was a little congested in my truck, and I'm like, is he sick? And then sure enough, he went down for the count the next day, and we had pizza night that night, and then I went down hard last night, the old head to toe body aches, and chest, you know, the whole 9 yards. But I set the alarm for 5:30 and I got up anyway. It's like, what are you gonna do? Lay in bed and be sick all day when you're alone in the middle of nowhere? Nope, not me. But at least the body aching parts, mostly gone. Sucks being sick, especially when you're out doing this. It was right behind me is the title of this one. Hello, Steve. I'm better at telling stories and writing them, but for you, I'll try my best at punctuation, LOL. Okay. I live in the Northeast Connecticut. I've always known that something is in the woods around here. Considering DEEP likes to say we don't have wolves when people see and hear them all the time. But everyone here should know by now what this encounter was. One night I was at a friend's house, and as I was getting ready to leave, I went over to the passenger side of my Jeep to put my jacket on since it was starting to get cold and I'm driving a Jeep. As I turned around, I heard a gasp from the bushes right next to where I was parked, and then I saw a 7-foot streak of reddish-brown hair run behind the shed. I stood there confused for a second and could hear almost panicked, heavy breathing. So, me being the person I am, who will talk to all animals, domesticated or wild, as if I'm talking to a person, says, "What are you? You don't have to be scared. You're too big for me to harm with just a 9mm on me." And that's when the fear hit me. It started snorting and stomping. It sounded like a horse snorting. The hair on my whole body was standing on end. There's some typos, while keeping my composure, I got the words, "You want me to leave, don't you?" And that's when it just went back to breathing heavy and calmed down a bit, but it was still there. He was waiting for me to leave first. Meanwhile, nobody in the house heard anything or even felt the stomping that was so powerful that it felt like when a big tree falls and hits the ground. I just got in my Jeep and went home. It doesn't keep me out of the woods, though. I figured if it wanted to hurt me, it wouldn't have hidden. It also could have just reached out and popped my head like a grape while I was getting my jacket. Other than that encounter, I've seen a few footprints and tree breaks, the usual telltale signs that they've at least been through the area. Until the other morning at about 6:45 a.m. I went back to throw some food scraps out for a stray cat that's friendly when I heard something I can only describe as a low guttural vibration that you can't hear but feel, and it ramps up to an audible level, then turns into a wolf call, followed by a sound of a woman say, "Wee." It kept doing it for about 10 minutes until I whistled at it. I could hear it clearly enough to know it was on the ground about 100 yards or so into the woods. I've never heard this before, and I've lived in that area all my life. So I decided that it's time to send in my encounters. Thanks for what you're doing here, Steve. It's helped out a lot of people. Feel free to use my first name, Jeremy. Jeremy, appreciate you, man. Make sure you email, send anything you got that's going to help somebody, all right, man? Keep it coming in. Just keep the knowledge coming in. We need it. We need the knowledge. That's pretty fun. We've never heard that message being shared yet. If you want me to leave, don't you? I mean, how many people would go, "Hell yeah," or maybe not? I don't know. I've never had the voice in my head. I think it would scare the shit right out of me at first if it ever happened. But I would like to think that I would try to say, "Okay, why don't you, now that we're talking, why don't you keep talking and tell me what's up? Tell me the scoop. Tell me the authentic, honest story. What's going on? What are we missing here? That's what I think I would hope that I would do. And then I would report straight to everybody here, as usual. This is titled Mountain Man Returns Home. Hello, Steve. My name is Clark. I grew up in the area of Mount Davis in Pennsylvania, the highest elevation point in the Appalachian Mountains chain. I've hunted there for years until I enlisted in the Army. I returned home to the mountains in March 2020 when COVID started up. I worked for the government for years. I emptied all of my bank account and headed north to a small cabin alone in the mountains. The only visitors I had were a pair of eagles and white-tailed deer that I would feed occasionally. One day after working in the garden, I walked to the stream not far from the cabin to wash up before lunch. I left my towel hanging on a branch and my soap in a Ziploc bag on a log next to the stream. When I returned in the evening to wash up before nightfall, the log where the soap laid was broken in half, about 6 inches in diameter, and the towel and soap was missing. I looked for signs of individuals that may be near my camp, and there was nothing. So what could it have been? The nights and mornings were still cold. We were still getting snow occasionally on the mountain, so I would leave the top portion of my window open about an inch to leave the smoke ventilate from my cabin stove, backdrafts at night while I was asleep. But when I would awake in the morning, the window would be closed. I walked around the cabin looking for tracks or evidence of something or someone in the area, and nothing was there. I often wonder why the evenings and nights were so dead quiet and still not even the rustling sounds of the wind through the trees. I stayed there for a few months and then moved closer to town. I returned a couple years later and sat up, camped along the stream far from the cabin. I laid in my sleeping bag on a ground tarp looking up into the night sky. It was filled with stars. And again I noticed the silence. It was dead quiet still. As I looked across an open area not far from me, about 30 feet, in a light mist, there he stood, about 12 feet tall, a huge, long, dark-haired creature that stood upright on 2 legs. Then time suddenly stopped for about 6 hours, and I do not remember nothing. When I regained consciousness in the early morning darkness, I could tell that I was dragged on the ground tarp to where the creature was standing in the mist. I reached my 12 gauge and my cell phone. I called a friend, and fortunately they answered, and I asked them if they would meet me at the trailhead by the dirt road, and they agreed. As I walked in the morning darkness through the open fields to the trailhead, I could tell I was being stalked by the creature. He will just stay out of the light from my headlamp. As I heard him walk on my left flank about 20 yards away. When I made it to the gravel road, my friend was turning around and was pulling up to the trailhead. As I glanced back in the darkness, I heard a voice in my head. It said, "Do not return here." That's the end of the email. I hope that we just didn't miss something, and there's more to this. But that's a pretty alarming experience, and that's really alarming. That would freak the shit out of me. If I lost some time and I woke up dragged with all my shit, whatever distance it may be, across the forest, that's alarming. And if it's got if it can outclass us to that extent easily and do that, why would it even bother following you while you're walking in the dark, right? Why even bother? Why even bother? It's so confusing. There's so many confusing things, but they're all adding up. I mean, all the points that are made, the experiences that are relayed, it's all adding up. Bizarre, man. It's really, it reminds me of Edgar's experience, and a few other people who have lost time and figured they were possibly touched and moved and dragged by one or more of these frickin' things. So bizarre. Be safe out there, man. You got anything else you want to share with us, share away. And don't be scared about talking about it with all your people around your community. Arkansas, suspected Sasquatch encounter. Hi, Steve. I was speaking to a friend the other night who told me that she and a friend were driving between Fayetteville and Fort Smith a couple nights prior, and they saw 2 UFOs. I then told her that there are also Sasquatch in that area, and that you had read stories about them. I told her that Sasquatch and UFOs seem to sometimes work together. She then said, "Well, I don't know if I believe in Sasquatch, but I do know there is more out there than we can ever know." Then she proceeded to tell me that the same friend she was with during the recent UFO sighting had a possible Sasquatch experience a while back, while they were driving near the same area. Her passenger for both experiences was a male friend who was a very experienced outdoorsman. He had to use the restroom and they couldn't find a facility, so she pulled off the road and up next to a woods for him. He got out of the car, was gone only a short time when she saw him come running back to the car, yelling at her to drive. He explained that he had heard a loud, deep growl unlike anything he had ever heard before, and was certain it was a Sasquatch. He was shook, so she took off. She believed him when he said that he knew it was a Sasquatch. And even though she says she doesn't know for sure, I think she really does know. Thank you for all you do, Linda. Yeah, no doubt, Linda. They always do. They always know. As soon as somebody gets told, flat out, straight up, from somebody they trust, even though they might verbally deny it out loud, they know. It scares the shit out of them. One friend of mine, close friend of mine, he always seemed to come across to me that he was doubting the reality of this shit. Just because I'm persistent and I don't change nothing. He's just at the point he openly admits being scared the shit out of them, and he said flat out the other day to me, "I hope I don't ever see one." So there you go. That was somebody who always said, I'd have to see one. I'd have to see one. And then he finally admitted it just scares him too much and he didn't want it to be real. He didn't want to have that experience. And he lives right in the hotbed too, right next to Mount Curry. And his wife and kids are hearing from other kids and people in the community nonstop about what they see as well. It's funny how many people just don't want this to be true. And you know what? Sometimes I wish it wasn't myself. I wish we did know everything, in a way. I wish we knew more than we know now. I think we do. I think there's a lot of information out there that we should know, and it's being kept from us for sure when it comes to this topic and many, many more. But anyway, maybe I'll see if I get one more done. I gotta get moving. I can't sit here. I'm just starting to fade. Oh. Alright, this one's titled, Red Now. Mysterious Happenings in the Ozarks. Steve, I'm telling you the story as it was told to me by my son. Please don't use my name. My son worked for government, feral hog control in southeast Missouri a few years back. While he was dumping hog carcasses in the designated area, he noticed that there was no birds chirping and no usual forest sounds. He dumped a dozen dead hogs along a tree line with some weighing over 200 pounds. The next day, all the carcasses were gone. No way. This continued to happen around 5 more times. Holy shit. There were no drag marks or any other signs of what happened to them. Nothing. No blood, no bones, no hide. Like something just picked them up and walked off with them. Later, when he was working with another trapper who had worked at that area prior, he started to tell him about the dead hogs disappearing, but before he could finish, the other trapper completed his sentence and went on to say that it had been happening regularly when he worked in that area. Both of them agreed it is an eerie place that gives you the feeling of not being alone. I also like to point out that this is very close to Piedmont, Missouri, which is known for many UFO sightings and strange lights appearing in the night skies. Thanks for the opportunity to tell the story. Holy shit, thanks for sharing that one. That's crazy. As I am very familiar with stacking wild hogs. My friends in Alabama, we go out every night with the thermal and the night vision scopes and shoot the shit out of them. And you go back out the next night and there they are again, and there they are again. It's just a full-on. If you're not familiar with the wild hog epidemic, whatever it's called, they're a virus. They're a living virus for real. It's amazing how fast they populate. Once they get going, you can't stay on top of them. It's not even possible. It's almost futile. I think Your average hog is sexually mature at 6 months, and they have 3 litters a year each, up to 12, 16 piglets. Do the math on that one. It's incredible. I've heard also that to try to keep the population stable, you have to kill off 75% of the existing herd just to keep it planing along, which is basically impossible, right? It's pretty alarming. It's pretty freaking alarming. And what feral hogs do is they eat everything. They kill everything that grows. They kill it out of the ground. And anything that's alive, baby, anything. Eggs, fawns, insects, reptiles, snake, whatever. You name it, they eat it and annihilate it. So, never ever attempt to judge someone who is taking part in trying to get a grip on those things. But anyway, they're pretty nasty. Once you get them on the ground, they are absolutely nasty. We had a pile of hogs one time. We shot at nighttime, stocked them all up. And we had a couple there that were 250, I think. 260 was the biggest couple. And in the morning we went in there and I had snake-proof boots on, high-top boots, and I was standing there and the ground looked like it was moving. And the ground had literally thousands of ticks as they were jumping ship off the hogs. And there was probably a dozen climbing up my boot in the first 1 minute standing there. It was absolutely creepy. So, knowing that, and I've hunted turkey in Missouri and sat down where there's a shit pile of ticks. Could you imagine? Imagine the ticks jumping off those dead hogs onto whoever's packing them? Whoa. But anyway, you might want to think about putting some trail cameras there, even though they probably won't work, but it would still be interesting if you put a trail camera up there on the dead hogs and then all of a sudden 1 frame later they're all gone. Even that would be interesting to watch, right? For some. That's crazy. That really make you look over your shoulder when you're dropping the hogs on the ground, wouldn't it? That was an amazing, amazing experience. I hope to hear more about that from you guys. And whoever's doing that and experiencing that, email us back again, all right? And give us updates of what's going on in that bone pile. Creepy. Anyway, I'm going to force myself to do a hike. There's a big old mule deer living right here in this hill. I caught him on a trail camera the other day, and I think I'm going to put an effort into harvesting him. Big, fat, old, gnarly, past his prime buck. I love him. And I think I can add that onto the end of this video on my phone, so maybe I'll do that too. And then I will report again soon. Puppy stampede! Easy, easy. You little goofy dogs.